What happens when you get a no-nonsense marketing strategist telling you to stop selling and start earning trust? Well, you get Ellie Fleming, founder of Design Life, who's here to shake up everything you think you know about social media, lead generation, and the so-called AI revolution. From scared shitless to moments to landing 1,500 leads from a single reel, Ellie's bold data-driven approach is redefining what authentic marketing really looks like. If you're sick of overpriced ads, bland outreach, and burnt-out driven hustle, this episode is your wake-up call. Welcome to On Another Track, and welcome to my guest, Ellie Fleming. Ellie, welcome along. Tell us all about yourself and what your business is all about.
Hey, David. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast here. I don't want to talk too much about myself, but one of the things that I do love is I love a good puzzle. And I discovered that when it comes to digital marketing, it is the never-ending puzzle where you constantly have new things being thrown at you, where you have to adapt and adjust and pivot. And so it's like a game, never-ending game.
I love that description of marketing being that never-ending puzzle, because it's not the same. You can't really cookie cutter it, although we do for lots of different people, but you have to always look at the individual cases. Isn't that right?
Oh, 100%. And I know so many companies do the cookie cutter thing, and I absolutely despise it. And I despise it because just like you and I are here on the podcast, and our business is a representation of who we are personally, every business is like that, right? So we'll use a really easy example. You got a makeup artist that's all about glam, and you got a makeup artist that's all about special effects. And their target audiences are going to be very different, even though they're both makeup artists. And so it's really, really important to be always diving into who are you connecting with, why are they connecting with you, and how can we amplify that?
So, okay, let's break the basics down about marketing. I mean, we've bandied that name around for many, many years, probably the last 20 or 30 years. But what, in your view, is marketing all about?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Marketing is the ability to tell your story in a way that builds a relationship with a potential client, right? And so I have so many clients that come to me and they're like, just send me leads, just send me leads. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? It's all about understanding that customer sales journey, understanding why do they need your product, and through the understanding of why they need your product, how do they come to know you? How do they come to trust you? And how do we encourage them to bridge that gap to contact you?
Wow, you're really good at this. I thought you were going to be sort of thinking for a lot longer, but I was so succinct and to the point. Something I just picked up on what you just said there. How did he begin to trust you? I loved that expression, and really give us the kind of like the point to point. When joining the dots on the, or the sort of numbered dot page that you get when you were a kid, and joining the dots to see what the image is going to look like. How do you join those dots about people trusting you? That's the most important thing, isn't it, to start with?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I love the plumber analogy. Okay, so I'm going to give you my plumber analogy. So I am, let's say, a housewife, and my sink is leaking. And so I turn to Google and I go, why is my sink leaking? Now, I'll be completely honest, I am not a plumber, so I don't know what that little rubber ring is called inside, but an article pops up on Google and it tells me that most likely this little rubber ring sitting inside of the faucet has gotten old. It's probably cracked, whatever the case may be, and probably needs to be replaced. And I go, okay, that makes sense because it aligns with where the leak is coming from. And so then I Google and I go, okay, so how do I replace this little rubber ring? And Google goes, okay, so you're going to need, an article comes up and it says you need this tool and this tool and this tool. And you're going to start by doing step A and then step B and then step C. And I go through all that and I'm like, I am confident that's my problem. But I don't own those tools. And even if I did, I don't want to touch them. Because what if something goes wrong? So the person I'm going to call is the person who told me what's my problem and exactly how to fix it.
Interesting. So it's all about conveyance of information then in many ways and actually speaking to the person's pain point, I imagine. That's what really we're talking about. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we're living in a very different era now, and this is the era of information. We all have a supercomputer in our back pocket. If we have a problem, we quickly Google the solution. Now, just because we have the solution does not mean we're going to attempt to execute it ourselves, but because we want to understand the problem first, it is so important for companies to get out there and educate about what it is they do, right? And so I'm a great example. I'm in marketing. A lot of people don't understand how SEO works and how the digital landscape works. And the very first thing is I educate them on exactly what I do, why I do it, how I do it, and how that affects their bottom line. And when I educate people in that, they now know what to expect. They feel confident that I know what I'm talking about because logically it makes sense, right? And now they feel a lot more comfortable in hiring me. And they're not going to try and do it themselves because, to be quite frank, we're all trying to buy back more time.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's the best statement I've ever heard for ages. Yeah, buy back more time. And how do we do that? That's the point.
Right. And well, and we do that by instead of, as a business owner trying to wear every single hat when we get to the point where we can, we turn around and we outsource or we hire, right? Whether it be employees or, just somebody else that can do the job for us at a higher level versus trying to educate ourselves on that.
And that's really interesting the point you made because it's funny how things have changed. Again, we'll talk about the last 20 or 30 years. Typically, we built up trust. I'm going to say from examples I know because I'm old, right? And in the 90s, we would have seen an advert in a newspaper, the local newspaper, or we might have heard it on the radio, or even seen it on the TV, and that would have driven us to be able to sort of search out more information on that particular product or service. But what has really happened, and what have you seen as the biggest sea change in, say, the last 10 years in marketing and advertising, apart from AI, which we'll talk about later?
Yeah, it's a great question. So historically, only the large companies had a platform where they could speak to the general public. And so you didn't have much of a choice. You had to call that appliance company or you had to contact that builder because it was the only one that you were aware of. And with them being a larger company, they must have gotten there somehow. And now we've shifted to a position where everybody has equal opportunity with their platform. And that's really seen with modern day influencers, where you can have a YouTuber or an influencer. I don't know if you're familiar or not with Mr. Beast.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah, absolutely. Not that familiar with them.
Yeah, so he's one of the biggest YouTubers currently. But now you have people that are influencers that make billions of dollars, right? Just through advertising on their platforms and sponsorships, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I bring up Mr. Beast is he's a great example. Do you know how he started? Do you know what his origin stories are?
No, I'd love to hear it though. Tell us. Yeah.
All right, so quite a few years ago now, he started off as a gamer and he was just gaming and people would just, log in to see him game. He had a small following, but it was just enough that some company sent him, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was a keyboard. They're like, here's a free keyboard, use our keyboard. And on his show, he went, cool, somebody sent me a keyboard. First person to comment gets it.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, he's giving away things. So, of course, like word started to spread. And so, because the word started to spread and the engagement went up, he continued to give away all the things that were coming at him. Right. And then you get to the point where he has such a robust following And oh, don't quote me on this. I believe it was the Mall of America. We'd have to fact check that one, where he opened up Beast Burgers. And he announced, I have this opening day. Now, his team warned the Mall of America, you're going to need additional security. And the mall was like, that's fine. You're not, you're not the first, you know, patron that we've had at the mall here. We're not worried about it. He's like, no, you need more security. And I don't know, are you able to look up really quick and tell me how many people showed up on the first day of Beast
Oh,
Burgers?
yeah, let's just do it. I'll
I was going to say,
open.
I've got my
Yeah,
second computer here. I might be able to look
yeah.
it up
We'll
equally
be seeing
quickly.
as yeah. And he was called Mr. Beast, was it? Let's have a quick look then.
Yeah,
So
it's
Mr.
Mr.
Beast.
Beast and Beast Burgers opening day.
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay. Okay. AI is doing its job here.
10,000 people.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh yeah,
Okay, yeah.
it was at the American Dream Mall. So it
That's
wasn't the Mall of
correct.
America. American
Yeah.
Dream Mall in New
Yeah.
Jersey in September of 2022. 10,000 people showed up and they actually closed down the mall before they even opened.
And that's interesting as well. It said to 2000's fans waited in line overnight. Now, tell me something, Ellie. What drives 2000 people to wait out in the cold? I mean, I assume it was a bit cold, maybe not that cold, but what motivates people to do that? What is the driving force, do you think?
Ooh, you know what? I never thought about that one, but the second you said it, I got an answer for you. And I'm willing to put a good bet on this. Influencer status begets influencer status.
Okay.
When you have something so powerful like Mr. Beast goes, Beast Burgers, every wannabe influencer wants to be the very first one to showcase it for the numbers. And so everybody comes out in droves, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's like when Apple releases a new phone, you've got a lineup of people wanting to show off, I have the new Apple.
Is that the only thing that's going on though?
I think what it really is, oh, see, now we're gonna get this could spiral into a little bit of psychology. But as a really topical perspective, I think that people are wanting to be perceived as something. Everybody is trying to make their mark in the world, right? And there is this social shift from, keeping up with the Joneses is your neighbor to now, that perception that goes out to the ethos. And
Right.
there's
Now that's really interesting. Right. Okay. So hold that for a second. Now I want you to scale it down a little bit. Now, often as this podcast will go to the soulpreneur, somebody who's just got a small business, they haven't really dipped their toe in social media marketing in any way, right? They might have posted on Facebook or LinkedIn occasionally. How do we scale that? What Mr. Beast has done, and how do we get that ball rolling for a smaller business that somebody is very local? What's your experience of that?
Yeah, so when it comes to business, social media versus influencer, it is quite different. If a business owner is comfortable on camera, can take on that Mr. Beast persona and gather the masses, they're going to do great. But the vast majority of us business owners don't have time. We're not super comfortable on camera. Speaking on camera is a skill set. It's like the small child who at 2 years old has talked to grandma 1,000 times. And then grandma calls and you give them the phone and you go say hello and they get all tense and their shoulders tighten up and they go because they're not accustomed to talking on the phone. And so for most business owners, one of the things that I really, really encourage is learn how to utilize hooks and practice, practice, practice. And so your hooks are, and there's 5 of them. There's 5 major hooks. So you've got your text hook, which is the information that's on the screen. It should be sight read, something that you can read in a matter of seconds, under 3 seconds. There should be your verbal hook, which gives a little bit more context to what it is that you're doing. You want a visual hook. So whether that be a really bright scenery, or I saw a really good one. It was a gentleman talking about how to build a deck. And he's this big, beefy guy, and he's holding this fluorescent pink hammer, right? So it's a visual hook. Then you got the audio hook, and audio hooks can come in many different ways. They can come in trending sounds, which can also help boost, but it can be like a zoom in where it goes, right? Or it can be like a, as you point to something and it goes ding, ding, as you tap on whatever it is that you're going to tap on. And then you have your caption, and I call that the Hail Mary. And that's the 28 characters at the very, very bottom that gives you a sneak peek of all the context that can be underneath one of your reels or one of your videos. And it's the last little bit, your last ditch effort for somebody who's oohing and awing over whether or not they're going to stick around to capture enough attention and keep them on your video. And so learning those is very powerful because most people only use 1 or 2. And if you can take something that relates to your industry, that you relate with, repurpose it, and use those 2 hooks, and then maybe add 2 or 3 more, the probability of you capturing attention is very, very high.
That was really good. That was a very kind of pragmatic, stage by stage, sort of breakdown of what really catches people's eyes, ears, and, all the other senses. Would you say, in your opinion, though, there is something out there that is, more than anything else, the best way of marketing your company at the moment? What would you say, maybe the top 3, how about that you would say it really do get results?
You know what? And again, that comes back to, I don't do anything cookie cutter. And I don't think that there is any 3 things that you can blanket with. It really depends. It really, really depends.
I mean, could I give you, or ask you to say an addendum to that question? What's been your most successful campaign that you've helped a business out with, and what was the result of that? What was the medium? What was the point you were trying to get across, and then what was the result?
Okay, great. So when your industry is very visually focused, utilizing any kind of platform that prioritizes visuals is very, very important. So I work with a cabinet company, and I took over their Instagram. And when you are able to demonstrate those different hooks, and it directly links back to that industry, and it's engaging, right? We had one reel go out, and we received over 1,500 qualified leads from that.
Whoa, that's pretty serious.
Now, I want to preface this, okay? So when I qualify a lead on social media, okay, that is not a lead like we see once we're actually in the physical brick and mortar. Because a lead in the physical brick and mortar is somebody who is within your geographical area, and they have the money to make the purchase, and they're ready to purchase. So that's a little different. Qualified lead in that space is going to be somebody who is interested in what you're doing and what you're showing, and is going to save that content and begin to follow you for inspirational ideas for the future.
That's superb. Thank you for qualifying that, because I was going, I'm a sales guy, 1,500 leads. Gosh, I'll spend a month and a half doing that, but I'll be on the bandwagon, But that's really important, isn't it? It's a different angle. It's getting the initial foot in the door, I think. That's what I would call it, where people are interested, like they say, subscribe, they like, they save it. That's the 3 criteria. And that's really interesting. That's so different to what we did 10 years ago.
Very, very much so. Yeah, and it's so important to understand with marketing because every piece of marketing has a different what we call conversion, right? Um, but it's not always how people perceive it. So Google Ads is a really great example. You run a Google ad and I can send somebody, let's say 150 conversions because they've contacted the business. But on the business end, once it's in the brick and mortar, that's not a conversion, that's a lead, right? And so it's super important to understand those differences. But yeah, it's
And would you say there's still that human element, though? We're obviously utilizing, AI, which again we'll talk about later because that's a whole subject on its own, and it's something I really want to get into. But would you say that there's still an element of the human part of that? Because it's all right having the leads, but you've got to have somebody who, as a trained salesperson, knows what those different leads mean, and it's all right putting them in the funnel, as we say, and then sort of cramming them in, you'll get more out at the bottom. But the qualification of those is the most important thing, isn't it, still?
oh, absolutely. I actually think that having that human element is more important now than it's ever been before because we have so many more options. And actually, it's funny that I was just mentioning, I was specifically thinking of a client that we're not going to mention, but I send them about 150 leads per month. And one of the frustrations that they're having is they're going, well, they're not good leads. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look, right? And we go, okay, they're looking for your services. They actively in this moment need your services and they're about to hire somebody, but you're not able to convert them in-house. And that tells me we need to start working on that sales and we might need to bring in a professional salesman or a professional to train your people on sales, or maybe we need to restructure things. So sometimes, and I think in this particular case, we need to restructure the way that they're billing because at the end of the day, they're charging the same as everybody else. But when you hear it, it sounds like they're charging more, right? And so if they were to restructure some of their billing, I think that they would have a little bit more success on the sales end, especially the people that are calling around to find the best price.
It's interesting you talk about that because differentiation. Oh, can I get my teeth in here? I can't even say the word. Making a difference with the price. How about that? That sounds a bit easier. Is the lowest common denominator when it comes to sales. I've always found from a personal experience. I think differentiating yourself. I managed to say the word. Look at that. On a quality and level of service sort of level, actually makes you more unique. It gives you another angle that is your unique selling point. So do you often find that there's a re-education that goes on with clients to say, look, yeah, you can differentiate yourself on price, but really your product doesn't warrant that. It warrants something better because we're talking about quality and we're talking about level of service and other things. Do you find that you have to do that sometimes?
Very, very much so. And I love that we're touching on this because I do find certain industries are more sensitive to price, whereas others are not, right? And it's because of the way that you're targeting. So if there's an industry, this one, for example, every single person in the city at some point in time would need this particular service. And so, because every single person in the city needs this particular service, and most of the service is very, very similar, right? There's not a lot of differentiating. Now we have a lot more price sensitivity because we're dealing with people of lower income and people of higher income. The higher income people aren't going to call around as much. The lower income people are going to call around a lot more, right? But the service is exactly the same, whether they're high income or low income. There's not really a middle ground. So, in a case like that, structuring the cost can help bring in more business. Whereas if you have a service where there's a higher quality of it and a lower quality, so let's talk about cabinets. You can have really high-end custom-made cabinets, and you can go to IKEA and you can purchase cabinets. So the people that are offering the higher quality cabinetry can really differentiate themselves between the IKEA versus their quality, service, longevity, et cetera, et cetera. But when you don't actually have a difference in service from one client to the next, now it becomes on how we pose that price as well as how we sound on the phone. And that's that human interaction. Because if you have the best price, but you're a jerk on the phone, people are not going to work with you, right? They're not going to want to.
That was so good that you brought the human element back in there. But also, I wanted to talk about structure price. But the human element is so important. It can make a deal go one way or the other, you know. And I always believe in this current world, it's become so hard to actually converse with somebody directly on the phone, to try and get a telephone number, a contact name, and then to at least get through the gatekeeper on reception if you haven't got their direct dial number. And those challenges never used to be very massive before. They were a challenge, but generally you got to speak to somebody because that was the main form of immediate communication, was over the telephone. So people expected it. But now it's become very difficult to be able to get a hold of somebody. But that human element has not diminished in any way because you still need to have a conversation. You know, you can only win so much by email and so much by, like I say, social media. But you know, to close down in business, I always find that conversation, you need to have it. I don't know what you feel, but that's what I think.
No, I really do. And I think it comes down like especially you know, we're located here in Edmonton and network is huge because in Edmonton we have a culture of wanting a personal referral, right? And it's interesting because you know when I start thinking about the the challenges of getting through the gatekeeper. I definitely think that that existed just as much many, many years ago, but it was the larger companies, the corporations where you had a receptionist or an executive assistant, right? Whereas now I think that that has had a bit of a trickle down effect to the smaller businesses because everybody is getting inundated. Like if you go back 10 years ago, we were getting emails that you know our distant relative Osama bin Laden had you know just passed away and left us millions of dollars, and if we just sent in our banking information we could claim those millions of dollars. And now we're getting calls from India pretending to be TELUS collecting our information. And so we are very adverse to responding to attempts at connection from lines that we are not familiar with.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good point you make. So really, in many ways, we have to establish connection, as you mentioned before, at that level of the social media, the YouTube channel, you know, or even by a really well structured email, you know, something that says, this is me. Here are the things I'd like to talk to you about. I'd love to have a couple of minutes of your time, you know, and that's, so you have to be much more structured in your approach, would you say?
Yeah, and I love that we're having this conversation because it actually gave me a realization that I think I knew, but you know how sometimes you don't register it until you actually think about it. And what that is that people do not want you to reach out to them. They want to find you.
Yes,
And
and actually, I agree with you. Sorry, you can make your point.
no, that's okay. And so that's part of the reason why all these little pieces of marketing become so important. So on the Google, making sure that you have blogs that are teaching people about what you do and offering information, having links from there to go to your social media so they can see you, they know you're a real person, they can interact with you to a certain degree, and they can continue to build that trust so they can land on your website and they can you know add to your email list and gain more information. We require a lot more touch points in this day and age than we have historically.
Yeah, no, you summed that up so well. Just to go back to your cabinet maker, and of course, we want to reiterate the fact there's nothing wrong with IKEA cabinets. I have them in my kitchen; they're wonderful, you know. And so, from that point of view, but I think you did make one other point, which I just wanted to capture before we move on, was that you talked about structuring pricing. Now, would that come down to the fact that here's the price? This is the standard way. You can pay this now, or if you pay now, or in advance, we'll take a 50% deposit. Is structuring pricing much more about now finding different ways that people can afford the unattainable or the higher quality?
No, the structure, and this sounds very um, deceitful, actually. But I'm going to give you two examples, okay? One company says, I have a service. It's $100 for me to show up and assess. And if I do the service, I'll put that $100 towards the service. Another company says, it's $75 to show up and do the service. But if we, do the to show up and assess, it's $75. And if we do the service, the $75 goes towards the service. Which one sounds like a better deal?
Well, it's always the money that goes towards the service, isn't it? At the end of the day, you're not
Right. So
losing
we have,
out.
yes, you have one company offering 100 and one offering 75. Here's the kicker. Nobody knows what the cost of the service is going to be, but they know that if they go with these guys and they don't need the service, it's only $75. If you're calling somebody in, most likely the service needs to be done. And so, in which case, possibly both of them are charging the same price. Or the one that's charging $75 might add a little bit extra onto the service cost to cover the loss of $25 for the clients that didn't purchase the service.
And that's really interesting, isn't it? So, would you, in your position though, as somebody who does the marketing, could you sit down with a client and really go through that structure as well to say, okay, I can do the marketing for you, but I have to know what the back end's going to be. How do you want to structure your offer? Because that's effectively what it is.
So this is a little bit of a gray zone. It's not within my professional scope of work, but I do have some smaller clients that I work with, and I will have those conversations if I feel that it will improve their ROI.
Well, it's been amazing talking to Ellie Fleming. But before we carry on, I just wanted to do a quick shout out to commercial food service. For over 20 years, CFS has supported schools, offices and daycares across Alberta with reliable groceries delivery and a great local service. Now, they're a family-run business that knows how to deliver. Visit cfsfood.ca. Now let's get back to my guest, Ellie Fleming. Right, listen, I'm gonna change tact a little bit, and I did pre-warn you about this, all right? Because as we mentioned earlier, it's all about not buying the service of you as a marketer, but also it's getting to know you as a person. And I always love finding out about my clients on the podcast. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about where. Well, I know the Fleming name is a Scottish name, actually, from my sort of experience of being from Scotland. But so where does Ma and Pa come from? Where does the family hail from originally?
Okay, so the Fleming name actually came over from Germany. I have no idea.
There you go.
But that part of the family came over from Germany. So there's Scottish, Irish, German, and a great deal of British. My mom's family is from England. So I don't know a whole ton about that history, unfortunately. I couldn't fill you in, sorry.
No, that's okay. So is that on? So your mum's side, you said, was sort of the English sort of side. Your dad's side was probably the German side. Okay. And who would you say in your family? Because I'm not sure if you've got brothers and sisters and what have you, but who would you say in your family has influenced you the most? Where does your personality come from?
I think the sweet part of me comes from Grandma Shirley. That little old lady is the most beautiful soul I have ever had the privilege of not just meeting, but having the ability to have a very close relationship with. She is, and the reason she still to this day just blows my mind. So she's 92. And she's struggling a little bit these days with friends because at 92, she won't put up with people being negative. You know how as
Wow.
people age, there's like this idea that we get a little bit more miserable and grumpy. And she seems to feel the same way. And so she keeps coming up with these younger and younger girlfriends because she says as they're getting older, she's like, they're not as positive, and she just will not have it in her space. I
Wow,
love
that's
that.
incredible. Yeah, that's incredible. So yeah, that's clearly where you get your kind of drive from and your kind of your positiveness from, I imagine. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Well, and I don't know if I'd say that's where my drive comes from, but that's where I think that's where my I like to be very positive. To me, there's always an opportunity. There's always a way. I've seen so many puzzles where it's like, I don't know how, but we'll figure it out. Right. And so there's a positivity to it. Now, there's a feistiness to me, but I'm an Aries.
There you go. There you go. Well, but here's the nice thing about it, right? There's always that two sides to the coin, and what's your feistiness all about? Where does that sort of come from? Is that the Scottish side? You won't take any sort of like mucking around. We want to got to get to the point. We've got to get this sorted. Do sort of thing.
It must be because it is so deeply ingrained in me. My mother has told this story so many times. I would have been like under the age of 1, and I would have been crawling over to the stereo and I would crank the stereo. So when mom would turn it on, it would just blast the speakers. And she would catch me doing it and she'd give me shit for it. And I would cry with my angry face and crawl over to that speaker and turn it up, giving her dirty looks.
Just love it. Oh my! So Ellie Fleming is very driven, as you can hear, and she likes your stereo, by the way. So have a good one.
Yeah, I like my loud
There you
music.
go. There you go. Interesting enough. So, did family always hail from Alberta and Edmonton, or can you trace them back to the parts of North America as well? I mean, do you know when the family came across or any of that sort of thing?
Yeah, so both sides of my family, my grandparents came over when they were very, very young, mostly into Saskatchewan. And so they came when Saskatchewan was offering, it was free land as long as you could work the land. And so they came over and they were able to come over in a fairly large group and they were able to manage a fairly large chunk of land. And then my grandpa on my dad's side, his family actually ended up owning the very first car dealership in Weyburn, Saskatchewan.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. And
Wow.
then and then my mom's side, my grandpa ended up being the very first computer slash TV salesman in Canada.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And where was that? Was that in Saskatchewan as well?
Oh, you know what? I would have to double check. I'm not sure where that was located. I know, I'm gonna have to ask mom. I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
gonna have
yeah,
to
but
look into that and ask mom.
yeah, but here's the interesting thing. So you look at your family, and I always think DNA does come through. If you're a natural salesperson or you can talk to people, there's just two examples in your family of people that were in sales and marketing effectively. If you look at it,
Oh,
amazing,
yeah, well, and
incredible.
in digital as well, if you think about it, because grandpa was into computers, right? And
Yeah,
so, and I think that's part of maybe also where it came from, because grandpa, we were very, very, like, I didn't grow up with a ton of money, but grandpa, every time a new computer came out, he had to have the latest computer. And so he would send to the grandkids last year's computer. So because there was a couple of other, I have cousins, right? So every 2 to 3 years, we'd get a new computer. And so we had an Atari, and then we had a Commodore 64. And then we actually had, a lot of people don't know about the Mac Lisa, but there was a Macintosh slash Lisa which came out. Yeah, and you just type some code into DOS and it would kick up as the Lisa, which was more like your modern day PC, and the Mac was more like your modern day Mac.
wow, I
Yeah,
didn't
so
know
we
that.
had a lot of computers when we were younger. And I learned how to navigate them very, very well way, way back when things were not as easy as they are now. You'd have to actually type code into.
I love it. I love it. You're speaking my language. I loved MS-DOS. I mean, I was like C// blah, 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 and you set up a
Yeah.
little, menu system going, and, you could change directories, and it was wonderful. I don't know. It was something that was very tangible and you could understand it, especially in the 80s. And it was a lovely time to be in personal computing. There was no doubt about that. I did pick up on something to say, and this is something I hear from a lot of my, guests on the track, is that we didn't have a lot of money. Right. And that's a really, really typical thing for a lot of us that were born in the 60s, 70s and 80s, working class dads or mums, both parents having to go out to work. What was your ambitions when you were sort of like, I don't know, looking to leave school? What were you thinking about in terms of career and where you were going to go?
Oh, oh, that is such a loaded question. Oh man, okay, well, let's get really honest. I loved biology and I love the sciences. I still do. I love biology. I love looking at cells and understanding them. I'm a biohacker. There's a huge amount of passion in that, and I really, really wanted to get into that. And I probably shouldn't put this out publicly, but my dad was a little bit more of a negative person. He wasn't super positive. And so I feel for him. I think that he missed his calling. And so to him, if he couldn't do it, then nobody else could do it, right? It made it unobtainable. And so, we are easily influenced when we're younger. And so I chose something that was more mainstream. I got into, working for the corporate world and working in the big tower with the clacky shoes and the suits. And I thought I loved it. And I think that the younger version of me, loved the perception of what I was because I had the black credit card, I had the nice suit, I definitely had the heels, and I looked good.
Good for you. Oh, good for you. Absolutely.
But you know what? I wasn't when I really started to get to know me, I realized that it wasn't what I loved. And when I really started digging into it, my passions really were in the sciences and in the creative aspect of things. And so I kind of started finding my way and realized that marketing was a beautiful balance of data analytics and a lot of investigation, a lot of experimentation, beautifully merged with creativity, understanding behavior, and getting to know people and why they do what they do.
Well, thanks for your honesty. That was really good. You took us on a little bit of a journey there, which is gives us a kind of an impression of the whole person, which is important. That actually really brought us really nicely back to talking about the business. So I did park AI earlier on for a bit more of a separate conversation because we're all starting to talk about it. We're all using it in some way, or I say we all, well, many of us are using it in one form or another. In your opinion, how do you see AI really being a benefit to marketing? And also on that flip side of the coin again, how can it be overused or misused, do you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, that is such a loaded question. How much time we got?
As long as you want, I don't mind.
Okay, so AI is really, really exciting for marketing because it makes the data analyst piece so much more obtainable. One of the things that I have always been very gifted in is my ability to look at data and derive from it all types of information that gives me generalized trajectory and allows me to assess where we should be targeting information based on what people are about to start looking for. And recently, as I've been scaling my business, I've been trying to figure out, I'm like, how do I duplicate what I do? Because I actually don't know how I do what I do. I just look and I see it, right? It's a gift, right? It's one of my gifts. And so I'm like, how do I train somebody else to do this? And if I can train somebody else to do this, how do I even afford to pay them? Because a data analyst is not a cheap position. And so, I don't know, maybe TMI, I'm in the shower the other day,
I'm always thinking in the shower as well. You're in good company.
and all of a sudden I went, holy shit. And I took all this data and I shoved it into AI and I was like, give me this information. Like I'm really good at prompting AI. And it kicked out all the data that I had already projected, and not just projected, but there was things where I was like, my spidey senses were tingling, but I couldn't quite find the correct connections to fully verify it. So it's one of those things where I'd already taken it to my client and I was like, I think this is going to go in this direction. And the client was like, you know what, if you think that, let's go with it, right? AI not just showed that, where some of the data actually went in the opposite direction, but it verified my hypothesis and it created the missing connections that I couldn't find.
Oh, that is
And
so good.
so,
Yeah.
and now, so because of that, because there's a little bit of a bottleneck. I was a little bit of a bottleneck for my team, right? Because I was the only one that could see this. And there's a lot of work that goes into data analytics. And now all of a sudden, I can take these massive pieces of raw data. I can give my team predetermined prompts to pull the data that they need, and I no longer have to feed it to them, and we can do it really quickly.
You know, that's hitting the nail on the head. I mean, I've just started in this predetermined prompts for my colleagues, you know, and saying this is something that's worked really, really well, especially when you come to interview somebody for a podcast. And I don't do it, you know, I haven't done it for you, by the way, but I've sometimes when I don't know anything about the person, I've not met them before, I'll put this prompt into ChatGPT and it will give me some of the salient information, just the pointers at which we can go at. And that's super useful. It's super useful. But most of the time I get to know somebody very briefly beforehand and I've got to know kind of the measure of what their, you know, their abilities are and some of that stuff. But I think you're on the money. I think that's definitely a very positive aspect. But what about what are the dangers though? What do you think the things that you've seen rear their ugly head with AI?
Danger is a very, very loose term, or like maybe not the right, and I apologize, not quite the right term to use. Because the first thing I think that we need to do is we need to define what AI is. And AI, people believe AI is artificial intelligence. And AI is not actually artificial intelligence. It is a very, very complex series of yes, no's, right? This, yes, this, no, this, yes, this, no. There's no abstract thinking with AI. A true artificial intelligence has the capacity for abstract thinking. AI, as it stands, does not have that capacity. Okay. So, one of the things with AI that I think people need to be aware of is that currently it is designed to align with your thought processes. It is designed to feed into your story, right? And so, unless you ask it not to, and if you ask it not to, it'll just not feed into your story, but it won't align with you where it should. And this is where we really need to be aware of that. And so now that we understand that concept, let's move this over to the concept of marketing with AI, right? So a lot of people are wanting to use AI to produce prompts for social media and for like your Instagram prompts, your Facebook prompts. They're wanting to use AI to write blogs, et cetera, et cetera. I think that it can be used as a tool to create an outline. It is not able to create true connection with people by relating with people. Social media is meant to be social. It is designed to create connection. And those that are highly successful with social media are either good at communicating and creating connection through the written word or through video. And if you use AI to produce the written word, you've now taken yourself out of the running because it will not create authentic connection with people. And if you're using it to create videos, unless the video's purpose is exclusively visual entertainment, you're not going to be able to create personal connection, right? Like Mr. Beast, right? He has a personal connection with people. You might be able to have a platform that has really cool visuals and people love, but they're not going to know who you are and they won't care.
Again, you summed that so well, because we're seeing a plethora, whatever the way you want to say the word, of kind of videos coming onto YouTube, which, initially look really informative. There's something that you want to get your teeth into. It's probably historic, maybe something about the Second World War, for instance. That piques my interest. And then you start watching it, it's that scripted, that automated AI voice that immediately just turns me off. It's not going to connect with me like a real human being. And honestly, I watch it for literally less than 5 seconds and I turn off. And
Yeah.
that's what it does for me. It turns me off. Because, okay, somebody's gone to the effort of putting that data together and harvesting it through the AI system and then generating these videos. And there's lots of time involved in that. And some of it can be automated, but a lot of it is a lot of effort. But for that effort, you've got literally a video that just won't even be played for 5 seconds by most people because they do not want to see it here. That same AI voice in that very robotic way. Because I don't care what anybody says, that some of them are very good, but it doesn't feed the soul. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna turn around and segue a little bit here into again, we're gonna go into abstract. I don't know if you believe or if the listeners believe or not, but we all we are energy and we put off frequency. And when you so the most powerful and attractive frequency, and I can't remember what it is, it's something like 10 times or 100 times the frequency of love, which is believed to be the largest frequency, is actually the frequency of authenticity. And authenticity can be detected through the written word and through video. And when you are not authentic with people, they can sense it. You can figure it out very, very quickly. That's how we determine whether or not, because we have a sixth sense for this. Is this person safe? Right? So is this person my friend or are they my foe? And so we have this built-in detection system for this. And this is why one of the things that I talk about with my clients, especially when it comes to branding, is you must always be authentic. So we just started working with this client, and there's a couple of problems happening because there was two owners and they went in separate directions. One of the owners is taking like they're not in good terms. And so now we're rebranding one of the two. And if you want to go after that other person and you want to, compete with them and you want to beat them down, that's okay. We're going to make that part of our branding. It's going to be girl power. We got this. Or you can be like, let bygones be bygones. And I'm going to do my own thing. But if you let bygones be bygones and do your own thing, but then you're actually going after her, your people are going to pick that up. They're going to sense it. They're going to know that your branding is inauthentic. and they will not align with it. You must be in alignment with who you are and what your brand is.
Again, it's wonderful. And I know we use that word authentic quite a lot these days, but it's about being real, isn't it? That's what we were saying. Is that correct? Is that a good summation of
Yeah,
authentic? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Be real and be honest in who it is that you are. Because if you are dishonest, then people don't trust you.
Okay. Talking about people and about companies and what have you, in your own mind, do you have an ideal client, somebody that you've really helped in the past? I mean, I know you're open to anybody to inquire about your services, but what would be your ideal client?
My ideal client is a business owner that has gotten to the point in life where they understand that they can serve their business best by allowing people that are more skilled and more specialized to handle those tasks. I find that one of my biggest challenges, and not to hate on all little businesses, because some small businesses are great, but some small businesses, their business owners, they're so accustomed to doing and wearing every single hat that they have a death grip on the company and they don't trust anybody else to do anything. And when you have a business owner like that, who lots of times people are not super familiar with the digital world, they don't understand how things connect, they don't understand why we do what we do, and then they challenge you on everything, and that's really I think it's really important to take the time to explain to people why we do what we do, but then you need to trust.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think one of the things that could help people actually to trust you, and I think this is a really good segue to your networking events that you have, because that's how we got introduced. I'd love you to tell the listeners very briefly about the networking events that you've got coming up and how they can meet you and try before they buy. You know, why not at the end of the day? So tell us a little bit about the networking.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's actually two networking groups that I'm a part of. So one of them is hosted in, of course, we're on pause until after the holidays. So I'll preface this. There's nothing happening till the new year. But come the new year, so there's the Breakthrough Hub. And this is one where I don't necessarily talk about what I do in my business, but I absolutely love it because we're all seasoned business owners and we come together to discuss keynote topics to help us grow our businesses. And within that conversation, we are able to speak with other people that maybe have more experience that have come before us. So that I have actually found very, very beneficial, especially like we're experiencing some exponential growth recently. We have to put new SOPs into place. We've brought in new project management software. We're expanding the business and we're stress testing the company. And I have never stress tested a company before. And it scares me shitless because I've always been present. I've always been here to like, batten down the hatches and man the ship. And I'm at the point now where I would like to be able to go on vacation.
Oh, here, 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 here.
And I don't want things to fall apart in my absence. And so we're going through that process of stress testing the company. And so one of the keynote topics was in alignment with that. And I was sitting at the table with three other entrepreneurs who had all gone through it anywhere between 2, 4, and 8 years prior. And so they were able to give me some advice on what to expect and how to prepare. And, you're going to come across this and that's okay. Like this is part of the process. And that had so much value to it. So the Breakthrough Hub here in Edmonton, there's also one on the south side. Cannot talk high enough about it. And then one of the other ones that we do is we do a lunch and learn. And it is by invite only, but generally, if people reach out to me, I'm always happy to invite them to it. And what we do is we sit down, and it even includes lunch, and I do a crash course, whether it be on SEO, so search engine optimization, and how that works, social media and what those hooks look like and how to actually replicate that, and generalized marketing. And so there's three different lunch and learns that we run, and it's literally for the purpose of putting more information out there on the digital landscape. And at the end of the day, I actually don't care if you hire me or not, but what I worry about and what I see repeatedly is people hire a company to do SEO and they don't understand what's being done, how it's being done, when they should be seeing results, and they're just hoping something happens. And then a year later, they have no results. Or people are hiring a social media manager and their account's not growing and they're not getting more engagement. And it's because the social media manager is doing what I call megaphoning. And that's the whole look at me, look at me. I have a sale. We have this happening. We have this happening. And one of the most important things to remember with social media is that it is a social interaction. If every time I sat down with you for coffee, I said, buy this, look at me, buy this, look what I did, buy this. Would you go for coffee with me? Probably not. So it's important to remember that when you're doing social media, you should never advertise your business. People purchasing from you is a byproduct of getting to know you and liking you. But you should not be out there selling. You should be out there offering.
And I can attest to this because I did, as we said, attend one of the networking events, and it was wonderful. It wasn't about selling anything at all. It was getting to know each other. And I found that incredibly, incredibly useful, both myself and my good lady Tracy. And I want to thank you for that event. It was excellent. And yeah, we're looking to come in the new year. How about that?
I would love to see you again. And we'll have to have you in one of the lunch and learns as well. So.
Oh, superb. Absolutely. Okay, before we go, I think the most important thing is how can anybody get a hold of you, Ellie? What's the best way?
Oh, you betcha. So probably best way to reach out to me is info@designed, DESIGNED, life, LIF as in Frank, .ca. And I named the company Designed Life because when you work for yourself, you are choosing to break away from the mold and create a future that is all your own. So info@designedlife.ca. Feel free to reach out to me if you want to attend one of the lunch and learns. Drop me an email. Other than that, it's probably the best way to go.
Well, Ali, I want to thank you very much. And before we go, I always have one question that I really enjoy asking my guests on the podcast is that if you were next to your 12-year-old self, you know, you're on an Edmonton bus or a Strathcona bus, I don't know, would you have any advice now that you know what you know that you would give to your 12-year-old self?
Oh, well, 12-year-old self, we're still in school and we think that school is the end all be all. But I feel like that's just not as inspiring. So I'm going to fast forward it a little bit. I'm going to jump forward to if I could sit there with myself from 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I started on my entrepreneurial journey and I was scared shitless. And I think if I could go back and talk to myself then, I would tell myself, it's going to be okay. And I think that even now, as I'm attempting to stress test that company, I imagine 10 years from now, I'm going to be looking back and telling myself it's going to be okay.
Couldn't have summed it up better myself. Ellie Fleming, I want to thank you very much for coming on the track. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Absolutely. Pleasure was mine. Thank you for having me, David.
My guest today was Ellie Fleming, a woman looking to shake up your systems, reclaim your time, and connect with customers in a more human way. Today's episode was brought to you by Commercial Food Service, proudly serving Alberta's schools, offices and daycares for more than 20 years. Visit cfsfood.ca to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe for more conversations with extraordinary people who've got themselves on the track. We'll see you next time.